Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. I have an incredible guest with me today. It's actually take two. We had a funny incident yesterday, but we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. But Navdeep is here today, guys, a TEDx speaker, which I'm fucking blown away by, and I can't wait to hear the story around it. Philanthropist who has trained over 30,000 people in 10 countries on the art of influence. This is the sentence I was referring to. Navdeep says, I believe that the more people who find their voice and speak their truth, the more we will have the hard conversations that need to be had. And the more we change, and the more change we can make in the world. Because if not now, when? I love that. There's a resume that is incredible about Navdeep, and I look forward to diving into it, man. And thank you for joining me today on the podcast.
It's my pleasure.
I'm
excited.
Tell us about yesterday. What happened yesterday?
Yeah, one of the things we were talking about just before this call was about how labels are so important.
Yeah.
And one of the labels that God gave me as a superpower is called Asperger's autism.
Yeah.
And I only found this out 2 years ago, Lewis. And it's really interesting, when people typically are given a label, they focus on the super downside of it.
Yeah.
And I have downsides too. So directions and spatial awareness is one of mine. So yesterday, it took me like so long to find the place. I literally jumped a fence.
He's like, just for context, guys, I sent the address and he's like, I'm here. I'm like, no, you're not. It was like I'm out the front. I can't get in. I'm like, where are you? And we figured out he's on the other side of the estate. And then I'm like, oh no, come this way, get in. He got into the gate, got the code to get in. And there's like, hey, I've jumped the fence. I'm like, what do you mean? there's no fence to jump. So the fact that you were willing to jump the fence, he's like, I thought that was part of the adventure. And I said, I love that. But no, but we figured it out. He came and popped in. We were running too late, so we rescheduled to today. But man, we've made it here. And we're, man, let's dive straight into that. I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I don't know the age, like 5, 6, 7, give or take. How was that experience with you? What was that like for you? How did that affect you? And like even what simply you just said, there's upsides to it, but there's downsides to it. So just tell me your experience with that, man, because you're the only person I know intimately that has been labeled with the same thing.
Is it?
Yeah, I hear like Elon Musk, and I hear many people that do have it, but no one in my intimate circle that has it. So tell me.
I'm so glad we met.
Pleasure. When you said it, we connected at my partner launched a podcast, and we mentioned it for 2 seconds. There was a lot of things happening that night. But yeah, what was your experience with it, man? How did it affect you in a negative way? And then how have you now seen it as a superpower, as a gift? And it's literally expresses who you are right now. And it's how you now touch the world. So how was that journey?
God's fun, huh? Yeah. So speaking of the journey, it was really interesting how it began. I was in, we all have exes and then we have the ex. Yeah. And so I was with the ex. And not in a good way, like the ex that was a pivotal moment in your development, Yeah. So lots of love for her, but you know what I mean. It's like that breakup that wasn't pretty. Yeah. And so it was during the unfolding of that relationship that I realized that a lot of people had a baseline of, I think Matthew Hussey calls it like RQ. EQ, IQ, RQ, relationship quotient.
Yeah, okay.
Like your relationship wisdom. Make sense? A lot of people have a baseline for this. But I didn't have this baseline. So there were things that I was so unaware of. And to my partner's frustration, like, isn't it obvious that when this happens, this is a good way to respond? And I was like, no, it's not actually. And so for the longest time, I was broken. And, in school, I didn't have many friends because I didn't know how to socialize because I didn't have that EQ. You could say. Yeah. I felt the feelings, but I didn't know how to communicate it. Make sense?
Yeah.
And so it was in the burning down of that relationship, which was horribly painful, that my auntie was like, hey, Navdeep, you should get this checked out. I told your mama when you was a kid, but back then it was either you have ADHD or you're weird. Yeah. And when I grew up in Malaysia, it was just, your kid's weird. Yeah. Do you want some drugs for that?
Legit.
So my parents said no. And then in the breakdown of that relationship, I went to see a clinical psych and got diagnosed. And at first it was devastating, Lewis. I felt like my ceiling just went to right above my forehead. And I thought, wow, am I just going to be here for the rest of my life? And it was so beautiful, actually. My partner at the time, we had a really big fight 2 days before I got diagnosed. And she somehow switched into compassion and really nurtured me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I'll always be grateful for her for that. And so basically, it also gave me a lot of relief. Because I was like, oh, I'm not actually broken. This is why I found it so hard to socialize in school. This is why I had like one friend in each school I went to. Make sense?
Yeah.
This is why. One good friend. And then once I came to more acceptance of that and was aware of the gaps, quote unquote, and how I could grow in them, then the real game began. Also, I was able to lean in more into the superpowers. So one of the things with Asperger's autism, as you may be able to relate, is that you're not as naturally aware of social norms.
Yeah.
Of social labels, right? Which has a downside, like I talked about in the relationship, but it also has a fucking upside. Because the boxes that people put themselves in, you don't as naturally. Make sense?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the TEDx talk in a while.
Yeah.
But I have friends who spent like a 6-month application process trying to get a TEDx talk. Make sense?
Yeah.
But I was like, how do we make this happen in 6 days? And it did.
Wow. How good.
You know? Soon I'm going on a speaking tour, 8 countries, 8 weeks. And some people would be like, oh, you need to have this for that to happen. You need to have this for this to happen. But because the construct doesn't exist as much, it's like, oh, of course you can organize that in the next 30 days.
That's good.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So it has these downsides. And what's really interesting, Lewis, is that I learned how to sell and generate buy-in and network and business. I learned business skills before I learned social skills. Primarily because, like many of your listeners listening, they probably have a mission inside of them that they want to amplify in the world. But they're like, how do I help people buy in to join this movement, to be a movement leader? And so I know God, and you may call it universe, source energy, God planted this movement in me. And I said, if I can't communicate in a way where people can opt in or out, if I can't garner buy-in, if I can't generate support, be it for the charity I used to run, the tech startup I was involved in, or just the speaking career I have now, then that movement, the magic will never go mainstream. And so now I get to help people make their magic mainstream. How
do you communicate your voice? What is someone's voice, and then how do they articulate that? How do they share that? Because a quote that comes to mind is Tony Robbins. I'm a huge fan of Tony. And Tony Robbins, and he it was just a YouTube video I watched a long time ago, and I just remember he said, like, if I needed to master business, or my mission would die on my lips, and it just kind of resonates with what we're talking about right now. So how does someone who has, I believe everyone's got a mission, I believe everyone's got a purpose, everyone has a gift that's in them, but people don't know how to communicate that, or people don't have the mindset to communicate that, or many other factors. But how does one communicate get their voice and communicate that and give that gift to the world?
Sure. So you're definitely right in that everybody has a mission, and it's up to them if they want to bring it into fruition. And this mission can be in different sizes. So my answer to your question is, it depends on the size of the movement and mission they want to create. Make sense? So whether you want that mission just to be in your immediate family, or in the family of the world, I'll give you a different answer.
Yeah.
Make sense?
What's your mission?
Huh?
What's your mission?
What's my mission?
Yeah.
Woo! Woo! Ooh, Yeah. Wow, I've never said this on camera before. I see myself as an angel.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
And I know there are other people who may not identify explicitly, but they see themselves as an angel as well. What do I mean by this? It means they're connected to something bigger. God, the universe, source, energy. And traditionally, an angel is somebody who carries out a mission anointed to them, gifted to them, birthed to them by something bigger. Make sense? And so I've had the experience now of the last 9 years, Lewis, failing badly and succeeding gladly when it comes to sharing my mission with the world. And now it's about helping other angels to really amplify their impact. I do this in 2 ways. The first is I speak at conferences around the world, helping people in the social sector. So NGOs, non-profits, social enterprises and such, how to amplify their impact. And the second is I help coaches and speakers to create their own global tours. So how do they get on stages and really raise the hope of humanity one stage at a time. Yeah.
That's powerful, man.
Thank you.
And how does one communicate? So let's go back to because I butted in with 2 different questions. So how does one...
I love how analytical your mind is.
Yeah. I think I'm seeing a lot of me and you, and you've probably seen... you're probably going to see a lot... even when you're sharing your story, like the social construct, it's like, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
I just didn't like... I'm a nice person. I'm nice and mean. Everyone's both. But I feel like my intent's always good, but it just didn't make sense. Like I remember... this is getting really personal. Let's get into it. I remember I went on my first date with a girl, and I remember for people that are watching the camera, I was so nervous. And you know how you hold hands with someone?
Yeah.
I was my friend had set up this date, Jeff, if you're watching this, and I was so nervous. I've never held hands with a girl. I held her hand like this in the movie because I didn't know how to do that. Wow. I was just like, so it's like people, especially girls, are so like intimidating. And anyway, I couldn't communicate. But back to the question. How does one learn to influence more, get their story out if they're just got blockages? They don't know how to.
Yeah.
How do they get their story out, their mission out?
Yeah, right. So what's interesting, people like you and me, Lewis, and maybe some of your listeners as well, we know that we can think fast and we can out-analyze anything. I remember saying something to a previous mentor of mine that you can out-learn any situation.
I like that.
Yeah, you can out-learn any situation. And also what I've learned in my time is that paralysis by analysis, overthinking, makes sense?
Yeah.
So typically when I'm working with clients, they have 1 or 2 needle movers. A needle mover being, what is the one thing that will move the needle most in your mission? So like the needle on a speedometer in a car, what is the one thing that will create the acceleration more than others? Make sense?
Yeah.
So the needle mover typically falls under 2 categories. The first is definitely strategic. So, okay, how do I land a TEDx talk in the next 30 days? I'm going to Gabon at the end of the year. So that's in 80 days or something like that. It's French-speaking Africa. Yeah.
We're talking downstairs about it.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, how do I land a speaking gig there? And this is my current game. Yeah. Which is fun. And we have some inroads there. So that's cool. So this is like strategic. Make sense?
Yeah.
One of my clients, you may know Dr. Espen.
Yep.
So he was already at above 1 million when we met.
Yep.
And now he's scaling to well beyond that.
Yeah.
And so the question for him was a different how-to question.
Yeah.
Which is cool. The second question, Lewis, is not how to, but is a more energetic or mindset one. Like you said, a block. Make sense? So energetic and strategic. Energetic and strategic. You can call it energy, mindset, spirit, performance, whatever you want to call it. It's all a label. When it comes to the energetic, as you said, if there's a block or a resistance, something that I found really, really helps is this. And it ties back to the question you asked earlier. How do people share their voice or their truth? Make sense?
Yeah.
Lewis, do you believe in something bigger, universe, source, energy?
I use the word source. So I subscribe to Taoism and how that belief. I don't give it a label, God or
that's okay.
Certain religions, but source. I use source.
Cool. All right. So let's use that. So one really cool reframe that you may find helpful in your listeners as well is, and I really was not a fan of woo-woo language, so I trust you'll get the essence of this. But now I definitely am. Is that if you think of yourself as a vessel. So in Hinduism, there's something called Atma, which means soul, and Pratma, which is collective soul, which they talk about in Taoism as well, this collective nature, right?
Yep.
And so if you think about yourself as a vessel, as an instrument, as a vehicle of something divine, of source, if you start to identify yourself as an angel, and what you'll find is that it's not. And a lot of people who love internal locus of control hate it when I say this. It's not actually your voice. Does that make sense? And this is not from a disempowering point of view, but an empowering point of view. It is your ability to tap into something bigger and deliver that. And so when you have this frame that you're actually sharing something that is more universal, something that is more divine, then your fear of rejection may still exist, but it has a lot softer of a voice. Because you realize that you are doing the source's work. You're doing seva, which means service in my language. And there's a photo here. It represents it quite well. It shows there's a photo of Elon, and love him or hate him, you can't deny it. Can I bring it into the frame?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool.
He is smoking a joint in that.
Cool. And people use plant medicine for all sorts of stuff. So love him or hate him, you can't deny he has a lot of cloud influence and cloud. And so you can even see, so this is a great representation. There's something bigger, divine, and then there's us. And so really what I help people do, Lewis, is I work with intelligent people who know all the strategies in the book, or they can get access to it.
Yeah.
But really, the real magic lies is now how do they go to the next level, is deepening this connection and then the connection between here and the audience.
Yeah.
Make sense?
And how do you do that?
But does it make sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
What's your religious background? Sorry, I didn't ask that at the start. So where did you subscribe to this? Was this in your upbringing? Was this once you got into self-development? Did you dive into certain books that gave you that belief, or was that an upbringing thing, or was that once you got into self-development you subscribed to this belief? Cool.
So there are two mini questions. One is my religious background, and then the second is how did I subscribe to this belief?
Yeah.
Or become awakened to it. Yeah. My religious background, my father is a Hindu, my mother is a Sikh.
Yep. A Sikh, did you say?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
You may have seen men with turbans before.
Yep.
That is typically of the faith.
Yep.
And interestingly, Lewis, the symbolism behind the turban, one of them is that if you see a man with a turban or a man with a kara, being a stainless steel bangle, or a woman, you can go to them for help no matter what.
Okay.
No matter what.
I'm trying to process that. So you just see someone and you just go up and ask for help whenever you want?
Kind of. So let's say if you're in a moment of turmoil.
Yeah.
So let's say that your partner is really sick, like really ill, and you don't have access to transport.
Yeah.
Part of being in that faith is that you're available to help people or introduce them to somebody who can.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So it's really special. So I went to this sort of school in Malaysia. We meditated most mornings and yoga.
I love that.
Yeah. And somehow I still managed to get suspended for fighting.
Good man.
How crazy is that, right? So this and the first word of okay. And how I came to this point of view probably is when I was atheist for like 2 years. I was really angry at God after my grandmother passed away. Really angry because to see the anguish in my mother's eyes and to know and to think that God was responsible for that.
Yeah.
Me as a young man could not comprehend. Make sense?
Yeah.
And then I started questioning my perception, and people helped me question my perception of what is God. And soon enough it became like this, not like a face, but like an energy. And then I don't know, but maybe you can relate that when you're on stage, something bigger takes over.
Just go into like trance.
Exactly.
Flows through you. You used the word vessel before. That's how I sort of picture it. It comes through you and you just express it. Or
Exactly.
You communicate it. Give it to the world.
And so I've experienced this enough now. In 2017 or 18, I did 84 talks.
Wow.
Yeah, in person. So I experienced it enough to be like, there's something here. Make sense?
Yeah.
And more recently, like I have clients who I just say, hey, I felt you. What's going on? And they'd be like, oh, how did you know? Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when I got to my first $12,500 in a month in like coaching, mentoring, speaking. I was like, this is great. And I know how to get to 20K months, maybe even 30, but it's going to require so much hard work and like grind and hustle and stuck in front of my computer all day. And I was like, oh, that's not why I got into this game.
Yeah.
So I had to start looking for another way, which was this more intuitive way.
Powerful. And does that answer the second question? Was that belief you have around source and where it's come from, was that through that experience with your grandmother, people just questioning you? Was that where that belief came from? Or was it you learned something, a conversation someone had with you, or a book you read, or something that gave you that deeper understanding?
So that was definitely planting the seed, and thank you for bringing back the question. To tie it in and wrap it up, in a nutshell, when I was making $12,500 a month cash, I believe it was cash, I was also fucking on the verge of burnout. My relationship was suffering. I was doing calls at like 5 a.m. Up till like midnight sometimes. I remember this one specific day. My health was not going well. And basically I was like, I can outlearn this situation and I can be cerebral about it and I can get some new strategies and pay some people and things like this. But I saw the people who were ahead of the game, like people already doing $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, totally. And I was like, I don't want their lifestyle. I have had the privilege now of coaching and consulting to 6 people who already earn $1 million above. Wow. One even earns 100 million.
Wow. Really cool.
And some of them, I'm like, I would love to experience that. And others, I'm like,
fuck that.
So at the time, Lewis, it was really heartbreaking. Because when I remember when I enrolled my first $100,000 client, it was like, wow, this is a whole new way of doing things. One person, $100,000, cool, good start. And then when I discovered the behind the scenes, like I don't name names because she's pretty well known, but when I discovered the behind the scenes of what's going on, I was like, oh, I never want this life.
Just too much conflict, too much chaos, not the right energy.
Conflict, chaos, stress, managing so many people. Always stuck behind Zoom all day in a room. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I started being more open to exploring different ways, which felt better. And so this morning before coming on this call, I went to the gym. I did some grounding. I was on a call where the majority of the people are $1 million earners in this space. And then I drove here. And tonight I have a lovely dinner and I have a pretty cruisy schedule, you know? Tomorrow I'm going to a conference for like charities and nonprofits. Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
And to have the space to do that, there was a time where it seemed impossible. But now it just is.
I like watching... I keep saying I see a lot of you and me, a lot of me and you, and like just seeing the way you process it and take your time. It was actually a podcast I watched with Elon Musk. I actually think it was that podcast where he smoked that joint
with Joe.
And like you'd ask a question, he takes the time to think about it. Where most people try to rush the answer, and it's like you take the time, and I really like that. You just
thank you.
Take the time. You're like, and you actually, how do I explain that? That might tie into this question. I got about 4 that I want to get in the time we got left. Influence, back on the topic of influence. If you were to give someone some strategies or some tools on influence, so they want to be more influential in their relationship, their kids, their business, their day-to-day life, how can someone increase their level of influence through either tools or strategies or a mindset, just maybe some real golden nuggets that they can take on board right now?
Yeah, cool. 3 things. This happening involuntarily, which is very cool. It means like something's moving. So the first thing is to pre-handle objections. Some people call this shadow selling. My friend Ryan, when he shared this with me, Ryan Tuckwood, Yeah, you know Ryan Tuckwood?
I know the name. He rings a bell. I think I've seen Instagram.
Cool guy. Yeah, cool guy. We were messaging yesterday. Somebody, anyways, you've seen 10x. Somebody released a conference called 100x. So lol.
Wow.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna a million x. Anyways, back to the topic. 5, 4, 3, 2. The first thing is to pre-handle objections. That means have a think and a feel into what are the resistance points that the other person will have and speak into it before they can. Make sense?
Yeah.
This way they feel heard, understood, and that you really have a level of expertise because you can foresee the hurdles along the way. So if I'm on the sales situation, I always know the person's like relationship status, relationship with time, and funds available, like well before I ever make an offer, because you pre-handle the objections. So I've had calls where I literally end them within the first 20 minutes, very lovingly, very elegantly.
Yeah.
But it's just like, why keep going?
Yeah.
And I give them next steps that they can take an action by themselves.
Yeah.
But I've had calls which have ended 20 minutes.
I love that. If we can just underline that a little bit, I learned this from Kerwin Ray, my sort of sales sale. I did his mastermind for 2 years, so
K12,
K2,
K2,
but K12, K20. So
see, upsell man.
Yeah. Keep going. He does a sales matrix if you're familiar with it, and just one of the points of it is intent over technique, and it's like if you genuinely the solution has no value. The value comes from the problem that you're solving. If they don't have a problem you can solve, don't sell them. And so it's like getting clear, like, can I help you? And if you can't, in the next first 20 minutes or so, you're like, look, I had one this morning before you got here, and bless her soul, 17 years old, wants to get her life together, wants to get into it, does not have the finances for what it is that I offer. And I said, look, here's a couple podcasts, here's a book I'd recommend. Start. What if you need help, reach out to me, and good luck with it. But it's like I knew she wasn't the right fit, and I was identifying the objections, and I'm just like, she's the wrong fit. But what can I do to serve her?
Yeah.
That's kind of the vibe I just got from you.
That's cool, dude.
Is that right? Is that
absolutely
what you're feeling?
Yeah. There's a fine line of that. And then, like, do they need to be stretched?
Yeah.
Make sense? So I have in the past taken like a $25,000 loan to work with a mentor.
Good.
Absolutely. And I profited on it within 90 days.
Wow.
Doesn't mean it happens to everybody, but it's available to you. And I tell you what, Lewis, when I got that loan, I felt so free. Any label that I had of money having power over me dissolved, because I realized that actually people who get paid to hand out and lend out money. And I was like, what? People get paid the more money they lend.
Yeah. Elon
Musk, Jeff Bezos, like them or not, all started with debt. OPM, other people's money. This estate was built by the Sunland Group, owned by the Abedian family. I'm fortunate enough to know Sahel, the founder.
Wow.
Yeah. God has a funny way of making us run into each other in the most random spots. Okay? So we recognize each other when we see each other, give each other a fist bump and have a chat. I think he's one of the biggest property developers in the country.
Wow.
Yeah. Who built this house that we're sitting in.
How good.
There is no way that 100% of the funds that he used to build this was his own money.
Yeah.
And so when people revisit their relationship with money, it's very interesting. So to answer your question, there's definitely a time and place where I... See, in sales, there's a time and place where I like, thank you so much, God bless you, we'll speak soon.
Yeah.
There's another time and place where you're there to push them.
Yeah.
Because they're two energies in sales. The first is detached. And detached is when you're doing a vibe fit. You're doing a qualification, an audition to see whether they're right fit or not.
I like this.
Yeah.
I like these answers.
Which is cool. And then at that point where you can tell they really want this, then you switch to relentless. Because you know that it's their fear getting in the way. Make sense?
Yeah.
You know it's not a logistical problem because you identified this earlier in the call.
Yeah.
You know it's a program. It's not a problem, it's a program. And then you become relentless. And relentless does not have to be aggressive, but it means you actually act as a mirror of what their inner fears are. And then ultimately they decide with all this information, dude, you just become relentless.
Powerful. Is that your second tool? We were going through influence tools. So one was overcome the objections before you get them.
Yeah.
Would that be the second tool? Be the
1B, yeah.
one of the many, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
be disattached or detached from the neediness of having to work or needing that client, but make sure there's the alignment and it makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can serve them, and then switch to that more firmness. I'm going to stretch you. I'm going to challenge you to get out of the way of yourself to make a great decision.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
That'd be the second.
I'll be number 3.
Great. I might pick up the pace, eh?
Oh no, we got another 12, 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. But I might pick up the pace on this section.
Okay.
Because I'd love to get... Yeah, this is really interesting, eh? Because typically when I work with people, Lewis, they're already somewhat decent at strategy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the insights I give them is actually more on an energetic stage.
Yeah.
I can play strategy all day long, and so can you. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is cool. And you want to talk about the TEDx thing too, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to go fast. So number 1 is to pre-handle objection. Number 2 is to detach versus relentless. Number 3 is to make it very clear the cost of inaction. What happens if they don't do anything, and allow them to come to fruition with that. So for example, I was once enrolling somebody into a life coaching engagement with myself. And they were talking about how they had been having certain thought patterns and sensations in their body for X amount of years. And I said, how long has this been going for? And they said, oh, about since I started working. And I said, oh, how long have you been working? Oh, about 16 years. So I said, this has been going on for almost 2 decades.
Mm.
That's fucked.
Mm.
And they felt it. And they really, really felt it. And if that was the only thing that happened on that application call, that would have been a blessing to them.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So help people come to their own realization in regards to the cost of an action. There's too much disassociation from our problems and disassociation from the pleasure that we seek and desire. So helping people get very emotionally embodied or felt into both these things allows them to make their own consensual, sovereign decision. But if they're too cerebral, they won't have that emotional attachment. And my first TEDx talk was about how people make decisions emotionally and justify it logically. Which, as a person with Asperger's and can think till the cows come home, that's kind of like my default.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can relate.
Yeah. If I ever have a joint or have a bit of weed, I can't sleep. I'm thinking, my mind is I'm like, some people puts them to sleep. I'm like, it takes me on turbocharge. I'm like, it's laying in bed.
Right?
How do I solve this? Oh, that's a good idea. I can implement that. I'm gonna put that in my plan. That's a great vision idea. I'm like, it's like 10. I normally go to bed at 8:30. I'm up to 10, just thinking. Fuck, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Fuck, that's good. I can solve this problem. And my mind's just going next level.
Yeah,
so,
dude.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so detached. The third is cost of an action. The fourth thing that I'm going to say, is really check your relationship with rejection. 100%. Check your relationship with rejection. 1,000,000%.
What's a good frame for them to have for that? What should rejection mean to someone in a constructive way?
Yeah, it's kind of that it doesn't actually go away. Yesterday, I made 4 offers. I got rejected twice, and I got a yes twice.
Perfect.
Yeah, the rejections I still had a human experience. On sales calls, my application call rate is about just under 75%.
Yep.
So 3 and 4. Wow, that's cool. I've never said that. It used to be 66%. Now it's 75%, which is cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks. But in general, so being on a podcast, being on a stage, I'm counting everything. Yesterday I made 4 offers, got accepted for 2. I still feel the clench in my toes. This happens.
Yeah.
For the viewers at home, the listeners at home, you can imagine my toes.
It's a beautiful looking toe, by the way.
Thank you.
Beautiful feet.
I can be on OnlyFans, right?
Yeah. Take some photos.
It's so know that it doesn't go away. I've worked with people who run billion-dollar companies. I've had dinner with them, and it's the same. So it's just you get better at moving through it.
Can we dive into authenticity? Something I think you express very, very well. And I
Thank
think
you.
I'd tie into your work, who you are, how you embody it. How does authenticity play a role in what you do and who you are? And how can someone be a little bit more authentic?
Yeah, great question. How does Okay, I'll tell you how it ties into who I am and what I do, and how people can be more authentic. And it's interesting in my relationship with the word is that it used to be quite of a buzzword. And I remember when I had finished my relationship with the ex, I then moved on to the next person I shared a relationship with, and I was just texting her recently, in a endearing way, which is nice, like a gratitude way. And I remember by that stage of the game, Lewis, I had read all the books, and I invested $100,000 in a mentor now, cash. I had learned a lot about mirroring and matching and building rapport with people, because remember, I didn't know how to socialize, so I had to learn how to. And so I managed to build rapport with this girl, and it was great. I felt loved, connected, all these things. But 6 months down the line, when my quote unquote more authentic self, crazy self came out, the match wasn't there. And it was heartbreaking. Really heartbreaking. And she was a decade older than me, so I guess she was a bit more speedy with her decisions.
Yeah.
Because of time and biological clock and things like this. You know what I mean? If that's the thing. So then I remembered, oh my gosh, now that I can mirror and match to build rapport with anybody, do I really want to?
Good question.
And maybe in your childhood, definitely in mine, it was about not saving face, but getting on with everybody. And now that's become less important with me. Like having a civil relationship, sure, but my definition of the word friend has definitely gotten a lot more specific.
What's that definition?
I've never articulated it. Hey,
Give it a crack.
maybe what I can do is have like layers of friends. I have like friends in commerce. That means people that I interact with in the business world.
Yep.
From the charity world, you have like friends who you'd love to bump into, and that's great. You have friends who are good friends, as in you see each other and it's like no time has passed. And then you have the friends that you walk life with. And at this stage in my career and in my personal life, really most of my openness is to receive and support friends who I walk life with and clients who I walk life with. So the clients I support, like it's typically like the foundations I set up for it to be a 2-3 year relationship.
Powerful.
Thanks.
We got 4 minutes.
Oh,
Let's go TEDx.
is that it?
That's it, man. It flies.
Dude, that's wild. Okay, TEDx. Let's do it. I just want to say one last thing about influence, which is really, really, really have a think about what your bigger game is and the other person's bigger game is. Your bigger game and the other person's bigger game. My bigger game right now, and I know it's part of a bigger game, is to donate $1 million a year to charity.
Wow.
Thanks. So this year will come up to about 50,000.
Right on.
Thanks. And why I'm saying this is also know the other person's bigger game, so you can, if it makes sense, link this game to their bigger game, and know that even if the initial engagement doesn't work out, your paths might cross later.
Yeah.
So don't
sever it.
Exactly. Make sense?
Yep.
It's interesting. And there's a fine balance between relentlessness. Anyways, so let's now get into the TEDx talk. Let's talk about this now. Tony. Yeah, so what's your question?
How did you get into it? It's a goal of mine. It's definitely on my vision board.
Yeah, dude.
So
you can get a TEDx talk in the next 30 days.
How did you do it?
Yeah, awesome. I've done 2 now, and I've also coached at 2. That means
Cool.
coached the speakers.
Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how that works. How does that work?
Yeah. So the key paradigm shift, Lewis, for you and everybody listening, is relationships open doors. Make sense? So the way that I'm going to speak in Gabon, listen, this is so perfect. Tomorrow, and this is going to relate to the TEDx talk. Tomorrow, I'm going to the Social Enterprise World Forum in Brisbane. It's a global meeting of leaders in the charity, social enterprise, and like social change space.
Yep.
Make sense? I already know that there are going to be 5 to 8 speaking gigs that come out of that.
Wow.
Around the world, which is cool.
Really cool.
Because a relationship is going to be built there. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I had a partnership at a time with the like a school association, which represented 7,000 schools in Australia.
Wow.
Through one relationship. Make sense?
Mm.
And I've done this enough time over the last 9 years to know that tomorrow it's inevitable. We can have juicy conversations, and then in the next 6 to 12 months, I'll be speaking in their countries. Beautiful, right? And so for you and for everybody listening, it's about how do you hack, skip, bypass the process of just being another application in a speaker application forum, and build a relationship with the people who host TEDx talks so that they trust you and you trust them.
Powerful.
Yeah.
How did you make the connection? Did you take us through it? Take us through the strategy.
Yeah, so the first one was a referral.
A referral.
A previous speaker made a referral to me.
That's cool.
Yeah, which is really cool. The second one, I was actually a coach. I coached the speakers the year before, and then the year after, I was a speaker. Make sense?
Yeah.
But something you can do really quickly right now is if you go on LinkedIn and you search TEDx curator, or you actually go to the TEDx website and find the curators in your local area, and then you get on their radar, which is pretty cool. And then you add value to them, and then you do what I did with you. Hey, Lewis, I trust you're doing well and having a nourishing Tuesday. Something I really enjoy about your podcast is ABC, and clearly there's a values alignment. I'm just sending this message to see, one, are you open to taking on more guests at the moment? And if you are, is it okay if I send through my one-pager, which shares some angles which can really add value and contribute to your audience? That's the invitation, Lewis. As with any invitation, you can accept or decline, but either way, let me know and I can send through the one-pager. God bless you. Speak to you soon.
Bang.
Bang.
There it is.
Our phone call, I remember it, was like under 3 minutes after that.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
Here we are.
So apply the same process to a TEDx talk, and you will be on a TEDx stage. You'll be booked on a TEDx stage in the next 30 days.
Fucking powerful. If someone wants to connect with you, so if someone wants to align with you, if someone wants to have you as a speaker at their events, where's the best way they can find you?
Thank you for asking. And God bless you. So my name is Navdeep, and the way to spell that on the internet is Navdeep. Navdeep. That is Navdeep. And if you're looking on Instagram, it's at Mr. Navdeep. And if you're looking on LinkedIn, it's Navdeep Pasricha. So I'll say that nice and slowly. Navdeep, Pasricha. Pasricha. And if you DM me the word Lewis, then I have a really spicy surprise for you. It's absolutely free, and you'll get a lot of value out of it, whether you're a coach and speaker, whether you organize an event, or whether you're just somebody who really wants to speak their truth and authenticity even more in their day-to-day life. If you fall in these 3 categories, then DM me the word Lewis, and I have a really, really spicy resource for free that you are going to love.
Bang. Right there, guys. Guys, thank you so much for getting to the end of the podcast. Share it with a friend. Comment below. Connect with either of us. And thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. God bless.
Pleasure.